Welcome back to the exercise application assignment. I'll be your host, Graylin Moon, and we're going to be positively burning through this. So let's talk about what I did last time I trained, because I'm a video behind. First up, let me get to where I'm going right here. Make sure I'm covering all the stuff in the hormones. Last time I trained. I can probably remember this off the top of my head. I believe I can. I trained back and triceps, which felt pretty good. I started off with some wide grip lat pull downs, which I've actually choked up a little bit on the grip. I've not been so extremely wide, which I tend to favor. But I narrowed it up just slightly, and it actually feels pretty decent, so I might keep it right there. Maybe too wide is not as good. But I did that, and then I did my heavy sets first, and then gradually working down. And then I did some single arm neutral grip hammer strength machine rows. And then on the same hammer strength machine, I did double handed, but I did it more so for the upper back. And then I transitioned into easy bar French press, which is, like that, but I'm sitting in it's a weird little seated bench thing. It's not like a real bench. And then I did some single arm tricep push downs, and then I finished with some lat prayers on this bar that's kind of shaped like this. I don't know what I would call that, but that's what I did it with. Felt really good. Usually not a big fan of lat prayers, but I've been rolling them in. And I think with that bar specifically, it feels really good, and I like it a lot. So let's talk about what we talked in lecture. So lecture on Wednesday, we basically just kind of reviewed the same stuff that we went over already. If we're talking about the basic sort of hormone stuff, I think we covered a little bit more of specific hormone type things. So of course we have the anterior pituitary. That's the big one. You got ACTH, FSH, LH, MSH, prolactin, TSH, and GH. So GH got to be stimulated, released if we're doing heavy exercises. I believe that was mentioned. ACTH, that's our cortisol production. Cortisol is extremely important because if your cortisol spikes too high, if you're in the gym for way too long, it's a bad thing. Your cortisol is going to inhibit your recovery. Why? Well, let's look at it. Cortisol production in adrenals. So where is it? Cortisol. Cortisol responds to stress, including exercise, to ensure that fuel, glucose, and free fatty acids are available and aminos are there for tissue repair. Mobilizes tissue amino acids, mobilizes free fatty acids, stimulates gluconeogenesis, blocks off glucose into tissue, and that's part of your general adaptation syndrome. If your cortisol is too high, responding to stress, I believe that is saying that it is breaking down. It would be a catabolic hormone in that sense, wouldn't it? And that's not what you want post-exercise, though cortisol does spike post-exercise. You'd want to be in a state of anabolism. Is that correct? I still don't completely understand that. Well, cortisol is responding to stress, making sure you have energy in that moment, but I don't understand how afterwards, that's kind of the highest spike in cortisol. I might have to ask in lecture about that or do my own research. Let's continue. That's governed, of course, by your ACTH. FSH stimulates follicle creation, spermatogenesis. And then, similarly, luteinizing hormone, that's going to control your test. Test is our primary anabolic hormone. Super important. You're going to get most of that release. The hormonal response to training is going to be generally from heavy stuff, talking 3 to 5 reps. And then the rest of the response is going to be mediated through the metabolites in your muscles, is what Professor Hyde said. And we did cover that quite a bit. We'll go ahead and cut it off here. Because I think that pretty much covers what we covered in that lecture.